The rain fell hard that night. The town was quiet, almost afraid. But inside the small police station, the air was thick with tension. A young woman walked in, soaked from head to toe. Her hair stuck to her bruised face. Blood was still fresh on her lip. Officer Kamal looked up, surprised. "Miss Nadia?" Nadia didn't speak. She just walked to the desk and placed her hands down, steady, firm, and shaking at the same time. "They came again," she whispered. Kamal stood slowly. "Who did this to you?" "The same people I reported last month. Raza Malik and his men." Kamal looked around nervously. A few other officers avoided her eyes. "You have to help me," Nadia said, her voice stronger now. "They beat me inside my own house." Kamal sighed. "Nadia, you know we can't. They run half this town." Nadia leaned closer. "Then tell them something for me." He hesitated. "What?" She looked him in the eyes, calm, cold, and serious. "Tell them my brother is coming." The town's secret fear. Everyone in town knew about Nadia. She was a quiet woman, a schoolteacher, lived alone in her small house, kind to children, soft-spoken with neighbors. But what no one talked about was her brother. No one had seen him in years. Some said he died in a war. Others said he disappeared after something terrible happened. No one really knew. But the few who did remember him remembered the name Rayyan with fear. They called him the ghost soldier, a man who never lost a fight, a man who followed his own rules. Midnight shadows. That night, Nadia went home alone. Her house was quiet, but her body was still shaking, not from pain, but from what she had just done. She walked to her bedroom, opened the drawer, and pulled out an old mobile phone. She hadn't used it in years. There was only one number saved inside. She took a deep breath, pressed call, and waited. 1 ring. 2 rings. 3. A voice answered. She froze, then whispered, "They heard me." The voice on the other end didn't ask who, didn't ask why. He simply said, "Where are they?" A dangerous game begins. The next morning, the gang gathered at Malik's garage. Their cars were expensive, their laughs were loud, and their confidence was untouchable. Malik, the leader, sat with a toothpick between his teeth. "Did she cry?" he asked one of his men. The man laughed. "She screamed." They all laughed. One of them said, "She went to the police again." Malik smirked. "Good, let her. That way, they know what happens to people who talk." But then, another man walked in, his face pale. "Boss," he said, "I think we have a problem." "What now?" Malik growled. "She said something before she left the station." "What did she say?" "She said her brother is coming." For the first time, the room went quiet. Malik's smile faded. "Her brother," he repeated. "I thought he was dead." "I thought so too," the man whispered. Malik stood up. "Find out where he is. Now." Whispers from the past. Far away, in a hidden army base, a man packed a small black bag. He wore a plain shirt, but his arms were marked with scars. His eyes were sharp, like a wolf ready to hunt. A soldier stood behind him. "Colonel Rayyan, are you sure?" Rayyan zipped the bag slowly. "They touched my sister." He picked up a photo from the table. It was old, 2 children, smiling in the sun. A young girl holding her big brother's hand. "She never asked me for anything," he said. He put the photo in his pocket. "But now, she has." End of the beginning. That evening, Nadia sat by her window. The street was dark, silent. But inside her heart, something had changed. She was not afraid anymore. Because she knew her brother didn't need a badge. He didn't need a gun. He didn't need the law's permission. He was the storm. And he was already on his way. Rayyan stepped off the bus in the middle of the night, his boots hitting the wet pavement with a soft thud. He didn't look back at the road he had traveled. The shadows stretched long behind him. He had been gone for almost 5 years. 5 years of disappearing into the world. Special Forces, his official title. But that was just a cover. No one ever asked questions about soldiers who came back or didn't. Now, he was here for one reason only: Nadia. The house that waited. The first place Rayyan went was the same place he had once called home. It had been years since he had stepped into the house where he and Nadia had grown up. The place was different now. Dust covered the old photos on the wall, and the furniture was worn down. But there was one thing that hadn't changed: the memories. He walked through the door quietly, taking a deep breath, remembering his sister's voice, her laughter. He stepped into the kitchen where Nadia had always made tea late at night. The house felt empty, but the past still lingered like a shadow. Rayyan's hand rested on the old kitchen counter as he closed his eyes, remembering the last time he had spoken to his sister before leaving. Her voice had been full of worry, but she hadn't asked him to stay. She had never asked for anything, not even when their parents were gone. But now, she needed him. Eyes watching. Meanwhile, across town, Malik, the gang leader, was already making plans. His men had returned empty-handed after searching for Rayyan. They found nothing, but Malik didn't believe in luck. He believed in control. He sat at his desk, spinning a pen in his hands. His phone buzzed with a message. Rayyan is back. Malik's face darkened. His grip tightened around the pen, snapping it in half. He had heard stories about Rayyan, a soldier who never missed his target, a man who never left his mission unfinished. Malik wasn't afraid of many things, but he was afraid of Rayyan. Find him, Malik said through clenched teeth, before he finds us. The search begins. Rayyan didn't waste time. He spent the next few hours walking through the darkened streets, observing the quiet town. Everything looked the same. The small shops, the old coffee house. But beneath it all, he could feel the fear. Fear of the gang. Fear of the corrupt system. As he walked, memories of his childhood flooded back. He remembered Nadia's laugh, her bright eyes full of hope. She had always believed in justice, even when the world around her didn't. But now, the world was different. Rayyan's phone buzzed in his pocket. They know. They're looking for you. It was Nadia's message, short and urgent. He didn't respond. There was no need for words. Shadow moves. Rayyan had no intention of running. Not this time. He knew the town inside and out. He knew where Malik's men hid. He knew where they drank, where they gambled. He knew the weak spots. By morning, Rayyan was already at the heart of their operation, the old warehouse by the docks. It was a place no one dared to enter, but Rayyan, he knew the shadows like they were his own. Inside, the gang was gathered, talking about their plans to deal with the ghost soldier who was hunting them. They laughed. They were brave in numbers, but when they saw Rayyan standing in the doorway, everything stopped. One man reached for his gun, but Rayyan was faster. In a blur, the man's gun was out of his hand, and the barrel of Rayyan's pistol was pressed against his chest. The room froze. "Who is the boss here?" Rayyan asked, his voice low, steady. Malik's men didn't answer. Rayyan didn't need an answer. He could feel Malik's presence, even if the man wasn't there. But Rayyan knew that, just like the men around him, Malik would make a mistake. Rayyan turned and left. But before he walked out, he said one last thing. "You made a mistake. You came after the wrong woman." Nadia's silent strength. Meanwhile, Nadia was back at home. The bruises from the previous night were fading, but her heart still carried the pain of what the gang had done. She sat by her window, watching the town slowly wake up. She knew what Rayyan was doing. He wasn't just fighting for her, he was fighting for everyone who had been silenced by fear. But she didn't fear anymore, not with him back. Nadia stood up, her hands shaking slightly as she reached for her phone. She typed a message to Rayyan. "Be careful, they won't stop." She hit send. But even as she sent the message, she knew Rayyan wouldn't back down. He was already one step ahead, a dark promise. That night, Rayyan stood on the edge of the old docks, staring out at the dark water. The wind cut through his jacket, but he didn't feel it. He heard the footsteps behind him before he saw them. Malik's men. They were closing in, but Rayyan wasn't worried. He was ready for them. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was about justice. and Rayyan was going to make sure it would be served. The rain started falling again, heavy and cold. It seemed like the whole town was waiting for something, for a change, for justice. But no one knew how close it was. The night the gang fears. At the heart of the gang's territory, Malik sat in his dark office, eyes narrowed. The message from Rayyan was clear: you crossed the wrong line. It had been a quiet few hours, too quiet. His men had been out looking for Rayyan, but the ghost soldier had disappeared like smoke. No one had seen him since that night at the warehouse. But Malik wasn't comfortable with silence. It made him uneasy. Suddenly, his phone rang. It was one of his men. Malik answered quickly. "What's happening?" Malik's voice was sharp. "Boss, it's bad. All the men we sent after Rayyan are gone, vanished. And we found something strange. Someone's been leaving messages on our walls." "Messages?" Malik's voice grew colder. "They're threats, carved into the walls. Every time we return." "What do they say?" Malik demanded. The man hesitated. "They say things like, 'You have no idea what's coming, and you've made a terrible mistake.'" Malik clenched his fist. "Find who's doing this, and deal with them." Rayyan's shadow. Rayyan wasn't playing games. He wasn't hiding. He was sending a message of his own. Every step he took, he made sure the gang knew they were being hunted. He wasn't just striking at them physically. He was getting inside their heads. Every night, another message appeared on the walls of their hideouts. First, it was just a few words, but each time, it became bolder, more personal. In the early morning hours, when the gang members went to check their warehouses, they found their walls covered with haunting messages. In huge, bold letters, "Your fear is just beginning." And another, "The ghost never forgets." Each message was like a punch to their pride, shaking them to their core. The gang that had ruled this town with violence was now feeling afraid. The fear spread quickly, even among Malik's toughest men. No one could explain it. No one knew who was behind it. But they all understood one thing. Rayyan was coming for them. Nadia's warning. The next morning, Nadia woke to find her phone buzzing. It was a text from Rayyan. "Stay inside today. Don't leave the house." Her heart skipped a beat. She wanted to argue, to demand to know why, but she knew better than to question him. Rayyan had always been protective, even when she was a child. He never allowed her to put herself in danger. So she stayed in her house, watching the streets through her window. The rain had stopped, but there was an eerie quiet in the air. It was like the world was holding its breath. Suddenly, she saw two of Malik's men walk past her house. They were looking around, their eyes darting nervously. Nadia's heart raced. They had no idea what was coming. The journalist's tip. A few hours later, Rayyan got a call. It wasn't from one of his old friends or allies. It was from a journalist. "Colonel Rayyan, I've got something you need to see." Rayyan paused, his eyes narrowing. "Who is this?" "A friend. I've been following the gang for months, and I know who you are." Rayyan's attention sharpened. "What do you know about them?" "Their operation, the mayor's involvement. The corruption in this town runs deeper than you think. But I have evidence, proof that can bring them all down, including Malik." Rayyan's mind raced. This could be what he needed to finally end this fight. "Where are you?" Rayyan asked. "I'll meet you at the old newspaper office, on the edge of town. Come alone." Rayyan didn't hesitate. He knew the risks. But this was the moment he had been waiting for. The hidden truth. At the old newspaper office, Rayyan met the journalist, a woman named Sarah. She was in her mid-30s, sharp-eyed, with dark circles under her eyes from sleepless nights. "I've been tracking Malik and his gang for months," she said, her voice low. "They've bought off almost everyone. The mayor, the police, even some judges. But I've got everything you need to take them down." She handed Rayyan a folder, thick with papers, photos, and recordings. Rayyan flicked through the documents. The evidence was clear. Malik's gang had their hands in everything: drugs, smuggling, and the dirty deals that kept the town under their control. And the mayor? He was right in the middle of it all. Sarah leaned in closer, I'm risking everything by giving this to you, but they can't be allowed to continue. You have to stop them." Rayan didn't say anything for a moment. Then, he closed the folder and looked at her. "I'll make sure this sees the light of day. But be careful, they'll come after you next. The storm gathers." Rayan didn't waste time. He took the folder and left the office quickly. He had everything he needed. The gang would fall, and it would be by his hands. But even as he walked down the street, he could feel the tension growing in the town. Something big was about to happen, and for the first time in a long time, the people of the town were beginning to hope. The sun began to set, casting long shadows over the town. Malik's gang was on the edge of their seats, waiting for the next move. But they didn't know one thing. Rayan was already 2 steps ahead. The town was on edge. The sun had set, and the air felt heavy with tension. People whispered on street corners, unsure of what was coming next. And in the heart of it all, Rayan was moving like a shadow, silent, unseen, and relentless. A hidden meeting. Rayan knew the time had come. The evidence Sarah had given him was more than enough to bring down Malik's entire operation. But it wasn't going to be easy. Malik wasn't stupid. He had power. And he had resources. Rayan needed to be careful. He knew where to go next, the old warehouse on the outskirts of town. It was a place where Malik's men often met, away from the eyes of the law. It was dark, isolated, and exactly where Rayan needed to be. He arrived in the dead of night, his boots silent on the damp ground. The warehouse loomed ahead, a dark shadow against the moonlit sky. He moved quickly, keeping to the shadows. There were guards, of course. There always were. But Rayan knew how to deal with them. With one swift move, he took down the 2 men guarding the entrance. They didn't even see him coming. He moved inside, his eyes scanning the room. It was empty, except for the large wooden table in the center, covered with maps and photos. This was where they made their plans. This was where Malik thought he was safe. Rayan wasn't about to let that happen. He moved to the table, carefully flipping through the papers. There it was, a map of the town, marked with all the locations where Malik's gang had their influence. The police station, the mayor's office, the docks, everything. Rayan knew exactly what he had to do. A dangerous plan. Back at the police station, Officer Kamal sat at his desk, his eyes tired from the long night. He had heard rumors about Rayan's return, and the tension in the air was impossible to ignore. The gang had been more aggressive lately. They were scared, and that made them dangerous. Kamal had never been one to follow orders blindly, but he knew better than anyone what was happening. He knew the law couldn't protect the people of this town. The system was broken. Then, his phone buzzed. It was an anonymous message. "Tonight, the end of the line." Kamal's heart raced. He knew what it meant. He looked around the station. His colleagues had no idea what was coming. But Kamal had a choice to make. He couldn't sit by and let this town fall into the hands of criminals. The warning. As the night grew darker, Nadia stood by her window, watching the town below. The silence was eerie. Everything felt still, as if the entire world was waiting for something to happen. Rayan's words echoed in her mind. "Stay inside. Don't leave the house." But Nadia wasn't scared. She trusted him. After all, he had always protected her, and now more than ever, she knew that her brother was the only one who could end this nightmare. Her phone buzzed with a new message from Rayan. "I'm close. Stay inside. Trust me." She nodded to herself, even though she knew he couldn't see her. She felt a calm resolve settle over her. The end of this fight was near. One way or another, the storm was coming. The final move, back at the warehouse, Rayan knew time was running out. Malik had to be stopped, but he couldn't do it alone. He needed help, and he knew just who to turn to. He picked up his phone and made a quick call to Sarah. "It's time. I need you to meet me at the old dockyard. We're going to hit them where it hurts." Sarah's voice was steady on the other end. "I'm in. I'll get the evidence to the media. The world needs to know what Malik's been doing." Rayan hung up and checked his watch. It was almost midnight. He moved quickly, making his way toward the docks. The sounds of the town were now muffled by the dark streets. As he approached the docks, he could see the lights of Malik's men moving in the distance. They were preparing for something big. But they didn't know who they were dealing with. Rayyan was already there, hidden in the shadows, waiting for the perfect moment. The moment of truth. At the dockyard, Malik stood with his men, discussing their next move. He had no idea that his world was about to come crashing down. His phone buzzed. It was a message from his top lieutenant. Rayyan is here. Malik's heart skipped a beat. He had been expecting this. He had known from the moment Rayyan returned that things would end this way. We need to move, Malik ordered, his voice tight with panic. But it was too late. Rayyan stepped out of the shadows, his voice cutting through the tension. You should have stayed away, Malik. The town had changed overnight. The streets were quieter, the air cleaner, and yet, something heavy still hung in the air. The price of justice had been paid, but the scars remained. Everyone had seen the downfall of Malik's gang, but few understood what it had cost to bring that moment to life. Rayyan sat alone in the small apartment he had rented, the weight of the past few days pressing on him. His phone was silent now, but the sounds of the city outside, the sirens, the whispers, seemed to echo louder with each passing hour. The fallout. The arrests of Malik and his gang had sent shockwaves through the town. The mayor was facing charges of corruption, and many of the officers who had been working with the gang had been suspended or fired. The people cheered, but beneath the surface, there was an undeniable tension. Not everyone in the town was glad to see Malik fall. Some had benefited from his reign of fear. Some still feared the truth. As the dust settled, the local news stations started airing stories about the hero who had brought Malik down. They called him Rayyan, the man who had fought for the people. But Rayyan didn't feel like a hero. He couldn't shake the feeling that something still wasn't right. The hidden message. That morning, Rayyan received an unexpected visitor, Sarah. She stood at his door, holding a folder. Her expression was serious, as if she had come with bad news. Rayyan, we need to talk, she said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. He gestured to the chair, and she sat down, placing the folder on the table. I know you're wondering what happens next, but before you can move on, you need to understand something. Rayyan's brow furrowed. What's going on? Sarah opened the folder. Inside were more documents, papers Rayyan hadn't seen before, but this time, they weren't about the gang. They were about him. These are some files I found, Sarah said, sliding a few papers toward him. These aren't from Malik. They're from the government. Rayyan's pulse quickened. What do you mean, the government? Sarah nodded. I know you've been keeping your past hidden, but these people know who you are. They know what you did before you came here. Rayyan stared at the papers, his mind racing. It was all there, his history in the military, his special operations training, and the missions that had never been fully disclosed to the public. They've been watching you, Rayyan. They've known about your return from the very beginning. The storm within. Rayyan stood up abruptly, pacing the room. I didn't ask for this, he muttered. I came here for her, to protect Nadia. Sarah watched him carefully, her eyes softening. You did what was right, but now, the truth is coming for you, whether you're ready or not. Rayyan stopped, his hand gripping the edge of the table. What do they want from me? I don't know, Sarah said, but whatever it is, it's bigger than Malik, bigger than the town. Rayyan's eyes darkened. He had tried so hard to leave his past behind, but it seemed the ghosts of his past weren't ready to let him go. Nadia's worry. Meanwhile, Nadia sat at home, staring at the news reports. The town had celebrated the fall of Malik's gang, but she hadn't been able to fully join in the celebrations. Rayyan had done it. He had saved everyone. But at what cost? She didn't know what was happening behind the scenes. She didn't know the weight Rayyan was carrying, but she could feel it. He wasn't the same as when he left all those years ago, and it scared her. The phone buzzed. It was a message from Rayyan. Stay inside tonight. It's not over yet. Her heart skipped a beat. She had known something wasn't right. The decision. Later that night, Rayyan stood in the shadows outside the police station. He had decided to take action. The government agents who had been watching him weren't going to stop. But Rayan had one advantage. They didn't know the full extent of his training. He wasn't the soldier they thought he was. He had always been 3 steps ahead, and this time, he wasn't going to let them catch him off guard. He entered the police station, his eyes scanning the room for any sign of danger, but the station was empty. The lights flickered as if the building itself was holding its breath. Rayan made his way down the hall, moving like a shadow. He stopped at the file room. Inside, he could hear the hum of the air conditioner, the soft shuffle of papers. He knew the files he needed were here. He found what he was looking for, the folder containing all the files on his past, the one that had been hidden away for years, the one that could destroy everything he had worked for. The unseen enemy. As Rayan turned to leave, he heard the sound of footsteps behind him. Too late, he was surrounded. A group of government agents stepped into the room, their faces cold and determined. Rayan didn't flinch. He had been in worse situations. But this was different. They weren't just here to arrest him. They were here to silence him. Rayan, one of the agents said, his voice low and emotionless. You can't keep running from the past. It's time to come with us. Rayan's grip tightened on the folder. He wasn't going down without a fight. I'm not going anywhere, Rayan said, his voice calm, but fierce. You'll have to take me. The agents closed in, but just as they did, a loud crash rang out. The door to the room burst open, and Nadia ran in, her face full of fear but determination. Rayan, she cried. You don't have to do this alone. The agents paused, momentarily distracted. That was all Rayan needed. With a sudden move, he grabbed Nadia's hand and pulled her toward the exit. They ran, the sound of footsteps echoing behind them. The storm had come. The city had become a maze of shadows, each corner hiding secrets, each alleyway a reminder of the danger that was closing in. Rayan and Nadia were on the run, caught between the ghosts of the past and the danger of the present. They had no choice but to move, but every step felt like they were getting closer to a truth neither of them was ready to face. The chase begins. As they ran through the empty streets, the sound of their footsteps echoed in the night. Rayan held Nadia's hand tightly, pulling her along as they darted through alleyways and down side streets. He couldn't risk being caught. Not now. Not when the stakes were so high. We need to get to the safe house, Rayan said, his voice urgent but steady. Nadia, breathless, nodded. But they'll be looking for us. The agents, the government, they won't stop. I know, Rayan replied, his jaw set with determination. But we have no choice. We can't let them get their hands on the evidence. Not now. The folder containing the files was hidden inside Rayan's jacket. Close to his chest, it was the key to everything. The truth about his past. The truth that could destroy everything he had fought for. They kept running, not daring to stop. Rayan kept his eyes moving, always looking over his shoulder. He knew the agents wouldn't be far behind. They were trained, relentless, and they had no idea how far Rayan was willing to go to protect Nadia and to keep his secrets hidden. The unseen pursuers, back at the police station, Kamal stood by the window, watching the chaos unfold in the streets below. The town was still recovering from the collapse of Malik's gang, but now, there was something even darker lurking in the shadows. He had seen the news about Rayan's disappearance, the whispers that he was on the run, and Kamal knew that the situation was far from over. His phone buzzed, and he picked it up, glancing at the number. It was an unlisted number, one he recognized only too well. I need you to listen carefully, Officer Kamal, a cold voice said on the other end. Rayan has something we need, and you're going to help us find him. Kamal's heart sank. He didn't want to be involved with the government, not after everything he had seen, but he knew the agents wouldn't back down. If they wanted Rayan, they would stop at nothing to get him. Where do I start? Kamal asked, his voice betraying no emotion. You'll be contacted again soon, the voice said, before hanging up abruptly. Kamal's grip tightened on his phone. This was bigger than he had thought. He wasn't sure what the government wanted with Rayan, but he knew one thing for sure. The truth was out there, and it was about to change everything. The safe house. Rayyan and Nadia finally reached the safe house, an old, abandoned building on the outskirts of town. The place was hidden well, known only to a few of Rayyan's old allies. Inside it was dark, but it offered the kind of safety they needed, at least for now. Rayyan locked the door behind them, his eyes scanning the empty room. It wasn't much. A few chairs, a table, and the bare essentials. But it was safe. He turned to Nadia. "We'll stay here for now. I'll figure out what to do next." Nadia sank down onto the chair, exhausted. What if they find us? The government? The agents? Rayyan sat next to her, his face hardening. "They won't find us here. I know how to stay hidden." But deep down, Rayyan knew that wasn't the real issue. They had already found him once. They could do it again. He reached for the folder inside his jacket and placed it on the table. Nadia looked at it, her eyes filled with concern. "Rayyan, what's in that folder? What is it that they're after?" Rayyan hesitated. He had been avoiding this conversation, but it was time. Nadia deserved to know the truth. He opened the folder, revealing documents, photos, and official papers. Papers that told the story of his past, of his work with special operations, and the missions he had been part of. But it wasn't just the facts. It was what had happened during those missions. The things he had been ordered to do. The things he couldn't forget. "Before I came here," Rayyan began, his voice low, "I was part of something much bigger than myself. I worked with the government, in a unit that did things no one else could, missions that no one could know about." Nadia leaned forward, her heart racing. What kind of things? The city had become a maze of shadows, each corner hiding secrets, each alleyway a reminder of the danger that was closing in. Rayyan and Nadia were on the run, caught between the ghosts of the past and the danger of the present. They had no choice but to move, but every step felt like they were getting closer to a truth neither of them was ready to face. The chase begins. As they ran through the empty streets, the sound of their footsteps echoed in the night. Rayyan held Nadia's hand tightly, pulling her along as they darted through alleyways and down side streets. He couldn't risk being caught. Not now. Not when the stakes were so high. "We need to get to the safe house," Rayyan said, his voice urgent but steady. Nadia, breathless, nodded. "But they'll be looking for us. The agents, the government, they won't stop." "I know," Rayyan replied, his jaw set with determination. "But we have no choice. We can't let them get their hands on the evidence. Not now." The folder containing the files was hidden inside Rayyan's jacket, close to his chest. It was the key to everything. The truth about his past. The truth that could destroy everything he had fought for. They kept running, not daring to stop. Rayyan kept his eyes moving, always looking over his shoulder. He knew the agents wouldn't be far behind. They were trained, relentless, and they had no idea how far Rayyan was willing to go to protect Nadia and to keep his secrets hidden. The unseen pursuers, back at the police station, Kamal stood by the window, watching the chaos unfold in the streets below. The town was still recovering from the collapse of Malik's gang, but now, there was something even darker lurking in the shadows. He had seen the news about Rayyan's disappearance, the whispers that he was on the run, and Kamal knew that the situation was far from over. His phone buzzed, and he picked it up, glancing at the number. It was an unlisted number, one he recognized only too well. "I need you to listen carefully, Officer Kamal," a cold voice said on the other end. "Rayyan has something we need, and you're going to help us find him." Kamal's heart sank. He didn't want to be involved with the government, not after everything he had seen, but he knew the agents wouldn't back down. If they wanted Rayyan, they would stop at nothing to get him. "Where do I start?" Kamal asked, his voice betraying no emotion. "You'll be contacted again soon," the voice said, before hanging up abruptly. Kamal's grip tightened on his phone. This was bigger than he had thought. He wasn't sure what the government wanted with Rayyan, but he knew one thing for sure. The truth was out there, and it was about to change everything. The safe house. Rayyan and Nadia finally reached the safe house, an old, abandoned building on the outskirts of town. The place was hidden well, known only to a few of Rayyan's old allies. Inside it was dark, but it offered the kind of safety they needed, at least for now. Rayyan locked the door behind them, his eyes scanning the empty room. It wasn't much, a few chairs, a table, and the bare essentials. But it was safe. He turned to Nadia. "We'll stay here for now. I'll figure out what to do next." Nadia sank down onto the chair, exhausted. What if they find us? The government? The agents? Rayyan sat next to her, his face hardening. "They won't find us here. I know how to stay hidden." But deep down, Rayyan knew that wasn't the real issue. They had already found him once. They could do it again. He reached for the folder inside his jacket and placed it on the table. Nadia looked at it, her eyes filled with concern. "Rayyan, what's in that folder? What is it that they're after?" Rayyan hesitated. He had been avoiding this conversation, but it was time. Nadia deserved to know the truth. He opened the folder, revealing documents, photos, and official papers. Papers that told the story of his past, of his work with special operations, and the missions he had been part of. But it wasn't just the facts. It was what had happened during those missions. The things he had been ordered to do. The things he couldn't forget. "Before I came here," Rayyan began, his voice low, "I was part of something much bigger than myself. I worked with the government, in a unit that did things no one else could, missions that no one could know about." Nadia leaned forward, her heart racing. "What kind of things?" The town was quiet, the night still, but it wasn't peaceful. A storm was coming, a storm of truth, lies, and the price of justice. Rayyan and Nadia stood at the edge of the world they knew, ready to face the consequences of their actions. But as the final hour approached, neither of them knew how much they were willing to lose. The calm before the storm. Rayyan and Nadia sat in the dimly lit room of the safe house, the folder containing the evidence between them. The quiet hum of the air conditioner was the only sound. Nadia looked at Rayyan, her heart heavy with the weight of the decision they had made. They couldn't run anymore. "We can't keep hiding," Nadia said quietly, breaking the silence. Her voice was steady, but Rayyan could hear the fear in it. "I know," Rayyan replied, his tone calm, but determined. "But hiding doesn't mean running away. It means facing the truth. And the truth is something we can't ignore any longer." Nadia took a deep breath, her hands trembling slightly. "Are you sure this is the only way? There's still time to disappear. We could leave, start over somewhere else." Rayyan shook his head. "They'd find us. They'll always find us. And this," he gestured to the folder, "this can't be buried anymore. It has to come out. I won't let anyone else suffer because of what I did." The truth was out there. The government knew it. The agents had been hunting him. But there was still one thing they didn't know. Rayyan had kept a part of the story hidden, until now. The unexpected visitor, just as Rayyan and Nadia were about to make their final decision, the door to the safe house creaked open. They both turned, startled, only to see Kamal standing in the doorway, his face grim. "You're still here," Kamal said, his voice low. Rayyan stood up quickly. "Kamal, what are you doing here? I told you to stay out of this." Kamal stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. "You think I don't know what's going on? I know about the agents, Rayyan. I know what they want. But I'm not just going to stand by and let them destroy everything you fought for." Nadia looked at Kamal in shock. You're helping us." Kamal nodded slowly. "I don't know what the government's playing at, but I'm not going to let them take you down without a fight." Rayyan stared at Kamal, then looked at Nadia. They had been alone in this fight, but now they weren't. Kamal had made a choice, and it was the right one. "We don't have much time," Rayyan said, his voice suddenly urgent. "They're closing in. We have to move fast. The file's in that folder." Kamal raised his hand. "I know what's in it, and I know what it means, but we can't let it fall into their hands." The final decision. The three of them quickly gathered what little they had and prepared to leave the safe house. The plan was simple: get the files to a journalist who had been investigating the government's secrets for years. He was their only hope of getting the truth out before the agents could silence them. Rayan looked at Nadia one last time before they left. Once this is out, there's no turning back. The government will come after us, but there's no way I'm letting them cover this up. Nadia nodded. I'm with you, Rayan. No matter what happens. With Kamal leading the way, they moved quietly through the dark streets, taking the long road to avoid being detected. Every step felt like a countdown, the weight of the truth pushing down on them. But as they neared the journalist's office, they saw the flashing lights. Sirens screamed through the night air. The agents had found them. The confrontation. Rayan's heart raced as they ducked into an alleyway. But the agents were closing in. There was nowhere to run now. We have to get to that office, Rayan shouted. He pushed forward, pulling Nadia and Kamal along. But the sound of footsteps grew louder. They had no time to lose. Just as they turned the corner, the agents appeared, blocking the entrance to the office. The lead agent, a tall man with a cold expression, stepped forward. Rayan, he said in a low voice. It's over. You've gone too far. Rayan stopped, his breath heavy, but his eyes were unafraid. I won't let you silence the truth. The people have a right to know. The agent smiled coldly. You think the truth will save you? You're just a pawn in a game you don't understand. This is bigger than you. Before Rayan could respond, Kamal stepped forward, his voice steady. It's bigger than all of us, but it's still the truth, and you can't hide it anymore. A tense silence filled the air, the agents watching closely, waiting for the right moment to strike. But Rayan wasn't going to wait. He made a quick decision. He pushed past the agents, shoving them aside with surprising strength. Run, he shouted to Nadia and Kamal. Get to the office. The agents moved quickly to block their path, but it was too late. Nadia and Kamal were already inside the building, with the evidence in hand.